pre-Columbian North America. It is the home of several Native American tribes. All peoples who fish, hunt, and live together in what they've felt as their home for hundreds of years. But unfortunately, good things only last so long. It was going to be taken away. This is their story. The Europeans have just set foot on the North American continent. They're killing, raping, and stealing from the Native Americans. All they can do is either run or stand up and fight. One would look back and say the suffering ended then. But this is false. Even decades later, Native Americans are suffering. %40 of the Native American population was living below the poverty line, and unemployment was 10 times higher than the national average. Their life expectancy was merely at 44 years. That's third less than an average American. They were the nation's poorest minority group.
That's all you got?
After being kicked out of their homes and relocated to reserves, Native Americans have been placed in poor conditions. Their infrastructure is poor, and they have out-of-date materials, such as wood-burning stoves for heat, outdoor toilets, and in an Apache town of 2,500, there were only 25 telephones available.
Where you go? Where you go? Faster!
Native Americans notably also suffered from covert and overt racism. And at times, they went to alcohol as a scapegoat. They suffered police harassment and neglect.
Who gave you these? Huh? Freaking Redskins? Why are you guys just loitering around here? No,
They were fed up. Native Americans did not receive proper education.
I'm going to talk about how the Native American education improved. So the typical resident only had 5 years of schooling, and fewer than 1/6 of adults completed high school. This eventually, the National Indian Education Act fought for equal rights for education for Native Americans. However, National Congress of Native Americans was formed to point out and try to fix protection of Indian land as well as Indian education improvements. Indian Education Act gave Indian parents greater control over their children's schools.
Back in the times of the ancestors of modern Native Americans, the religion was a very diverse one that brought significance to our surroundings and to nature. It brought people together and was peaceful. It was a great part of their identity. After Euro-American contact, the majority of Native Americans converted to Christianity, and if you weren't Christian, you were marginalized. With their land being taken away, with their hunting and fishing rights being rejected, and having poor education, and facing discrimination every single day, the Native Americans finally said no more. And they stood up, they rose above it all, and they fought their way to victory.
After this day, we fight!
As a result of the Tuscarora tribe's resistance against efforts made by the state to take reservation lands for reservoir use, this led to a militant new Indian organization called the North Indian Youth Council. They sponsored demonstrations, marches, and fish-ins which were to protest against the state's effort to abolish Indian fishing rights that were guaranteed by former federal treaties. They brought legal action against states that abolished hunting and fishing. And they led a march called the Trail of Broken Treaties.
Come on, man! No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace! 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 No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace!
The Trail of Broken Treaties was a protest that took place across the United States that was organized by American Indian and First Nations organizations. It took place in the fall of 1972, and its purpose was to bring national attention to American Indian issues such as treaty rights, living standards, and inadequate housing. It brought to the national capital the largest gathering ever of American Indians presenting their hopes.
Back up. Hey, back up. Hey, calm down. Calm down. Hey. Hey! No, knock his ass out! Get Muhammad, get him!
Unhappy with tribal President Richard Wilson's governance, activists occupied the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in Wood Dundee, South Dakota, that eventually turned into a violent 71-day standoff between the FBI, U.S. Marshals, and National Guard units. In Canada, there was a similar movement to the Native Americans in the United States. The rise of their movement came as a result of the loss of reserve lands and the government's failure to recognize Aboriginal land rights, as well as restriction of hunting and trapping rights being present, and the culturally destructive educational policies and administrative practices, as well as poor economic health conditions that were present on the reserves. During the 1960s, white paper policy was implemented by the government to abolish the Indian Act and the Department of Indian Affairs and Northern Development. This essentially took away the small rights that the Aboriginals had in Canada. Organizations then began to receive political recognition, and the NIB gained political momentum to formally defeat the adoption of white paper in the 70s. Some First Nation leaders, however, still believe that the policies exist today. Some differences between the two movements, the United States and Canada, being is that in the United States, most Native Americans do not live in the traditional area, while in Canada, they do. As a result of the Indian movements, in 1972, the Indian Education Act gave Indian parents greater control over their children's schools. Also in 1976, the Indian Healthcare Act sought to address the deficiencies in Indian healthcare. 2 years later, in 1978, the Indian Child Welfare Act gave tribes control over custody decisions involving Indian children. Menominee Tribe versus the United States 1968 declared that states could not invalidate fishing and hunting rights that Indians had acquired through treaties. And by the 1970s, Indian tribes had successfully won lawsuits to recover land illegally seized by whites. In 1980, money was granted to the Passamaquoddy and Penobscot of Maine and to the Sioux in South Dakota, granting them $81.5 million and $105 million respectively. Now, the Native Americans have gotten what they've been longing for a long time: respect of their past and inclusion in the nation as an equal. This movement has truly changed the way Native Americans live today and shall for the rest of the foreseen future. It is safe to say that they attained redemption.
Oh God! Okay.